I think he left us with a good task there that helps us segue over here, which is the to continue to speak out and continue to act. And people are continuing to speak out and continuing to act around Gaza, around Palestine in general, around the attacks on those who are standing up for the Palestinian people that are happening certainly here in the United States, but quite frankly, all around the world. And to talk more about all of this, we are very, very honored to be joined by Roua Dass, who is an organizer with the Palestinian Youth Movement. Roua, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, listen, the honor is all ours. And I guess I want to start with a question I think a lot of people are maybe asking. I mean, obviously, the situation is so dire right now in Gaza and across Palestine. And I think a lot of people, maybe not, I don't know a lot of people. There are many people out there who are feeling some sense of despair. Should we keep speaking out? Should we keep taking action? Why is it important that people don't just lapse into inaction in this moment, even in the midst of what is obviously a very terrible situation?
Yeah, this is a great question, and I think the answer is there is no choice but to continue to take action. There is no choice but to continue to be out in the streets every single day because the genocide has not eased up, right? We know the genocide has actually only escalated, and right now, the people of Gaza are still being bombed, are still being starved. UN schools, hospitals, tents, refugee camps are still being attacked. And this is on top of the escalating attacks in the West Bank, the attacks on Lebanon, the attacks in Yemen, the attacks in Syria, the Zionist attacks all over the region, including the Zionist attacks here in the US. And so it is important that we continue to speak up because the genocide has not stopped, and because that we know that hiding will not save us. Hiding will not save us from these the attacks, from the repression that is coming, and in fact will only make us weaker.
You know, Rua, I'm glad you brought up the repression because I think the point of repression, like we're seeing around the country, particularly with the abduction of these students like Mahmoud Khalil and others off the streets and attempted deportations of them for speaking out against genocide, a part of that repression is meant to make people scared so that they don't come out, so that they don't oppose genocide, so they don't speak out, they don't organize, they don't come out into the streets. And that is people's instinct, is to feel scared when things like this are happening. So can you speak a bit more to why it's more important than ever in the midst of this crackdown to get even louder?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the place that we must always start, that we will always continue to look to as our compass, as our guide, is the Palestinian people, is the people in Gaza. And as we just talked about, the genocide has only escalated. For over 17 months, we have witnessed the people of Gaza endure a brutal, ongoing genocide carried out by Israel with the full backing and support of the US government, right? And in the past 2 weeks alone, we have had Israel murder almost 100 people every single day, almost 100 Palestinians every single day. On Eid, children were being pulled out of the rubble wearing their brand new Eid clothes, right?
Mm.
And these attacks are not separate from the attacks in the US. As you mentioned, the attacks against the student movement from Mahmoud to Badr to Rasmiya and all the other students that have been detained, kidnapped, abducted by ICE agents, taken off the streets, these attacks are meant to scare us. They are meant to get us to stop advocating, to stop organizing, to stop being out there on the streets, supporting the people of Gaza who are so steadfastly standing up and against this genocide. And we must now, just as we showed the Biden administration, that it doesn't matter how long they carry out the genocide, we will not stop organizing, right? We must show the Trump administration that we will not abandon Palestine. We will never abandon Palestine, no matter what they do to us, no matter if they abduct us, if they kidnap us, if they arrest us. It doesn't matter, because the cause for Palestine is first and foremost. The cause for Palestine's liberation will always be what guides us and will always be what we sacrifice for.
I think that's such a good point. And to me, it speaks to so much of what we've seen around the world in the course of this genocide, this just massive movement that has arisen in so many different countries and just everything you can imagine, every type of person, millions of people, political crises created for everybody. Is if it didn't matter, why would they be arresting people, deporting people, doing all these things? And I know that sometimes it's hard because you feel like you want something terrible to stop. But I feel like there's a big difference between, something not achieving a goal and something not mattering. Like, we still have a lot more to do for the Palestinian people. But to say that what's happened doesn't matter doesn't seem to actually reflect how angry and upset the people doing the genocide are, that people are marching and rallying and petitioning and so on.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, you have the president of the empire, right? You have the president of the most powerful military in the world targeting students that were protesting a genocide on campuses. You have him targeting negotiators for divestment on university campuses. You have him targeting students that wrote op-eds in the school newspaper. I mean, that is how powerful our movement is. That is how effective the movement for Palestine liberation in North America has been. And this is absolutely an attempt to liquidate the movement. An attempt, however, that will not work, because again, the people have shown that they are with Palestine. The students, the community members, people of conscience all over the world have shown that they are with Palestine, and they will do whatever it takes to continue to stand in solidarity with the Palestinian people and to organize against this genocide.
Well, with all that in mind, there is a massive rally taking place this Saturday, April 5th, in Washington, D.C. Can you tell us why this is a particularly, I mean, they're all important, these rallies, but what is so important about this one on April 5th?
I mean, on April 5th, thousands of people around the country will be going to Washington, D.C. to demand an arms embargo, to demand an immediate end to the genocide, and to demand an immediate end to the repression against the students and against the Palestine movement in North America. This march, this protest, is one of the most important ones that we have done in the past 2 years. This protest, with the restarting, the resumption of the genocide, with the ethnic cleansing plans that Trump alongside the US are drawing up for Gaza to displace the people of Gaza, with the attacks in the West Bank, with the attacks on the student movement and the Palestine movement here, this march is our opportunity to show Trump, to show Netanyahu, to show Zionists, the Zionist entity and Zionist institutions everywhere, that the people will not stop. The people will not stop. You will not tire us out. The Palestine movement, I mean, the Palestinian people have survived 100 years of occupation, right? 77 years of colonization. In the US, the Palestine movement has survived arrests, has survived attacks, has survived infiltration, abduction, all of these tactics that they have taken, all of these measures that they have taken in order to try to stop our movement. Now is the time for us to stand up and show them that it will not work. They can keep trying, but it will not work. And it will not work because, again, we are determined. We will continue to fight for the liberation of Palestine.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's such a great point. I mean, every movement that's ever succeeded has been brutally suppressed. I mean, and repressed, but nonetheless, it has still succeeded. And I think that's something we have to keep, track of. And one thing I want to also ask you about this is I know one of the elements of this is to march directly to ICE, which I think is drawing a number of issues together. Why is that specific target so important? I mean, maybe it's obvious to many people who know what's going on, but I think it's worth saying here as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think ICE and deportations right now are the Trump administration's primary tactic to repress the Palestine movement and to repress the student movement. And so we are marching to ICE again to show that we are not scared. We are not scared, and we will continue to stand up. And in fact, that these deportations and these scare tactics have only further motivated us and further motivated the Palestine movement to continue to organize.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I think that's like a crucial new element to all of this because we're in an era where everything's more intense. And, you're a Palestine Youth Movement, which has also kind of been in the crosshairs. It's been attacked by name many times. So I'm just curious, how do you speak to those who maybe feel like they're in more vulnerable positions? I mean, the reality is that people who are not American citizens in this moment do feel fearful because of what they're seeing happen with visa revocations, with green card holders being sought after. And I'm personally not sure what to tell people. Like, I have friends who are like, well, I'm not a citizen yet. Like, I'm in the process, so I'm scared to go to protests. How do you speak to, or what are your words of wisdom for people who feel like they're in vulnerable situations when it comes to speaking out on this issue?
What I would say is that I think everyone has a place in the movement. There is a way for every single person to contribute. No matter what their risk level is, no matter what their positionality is, no matter what their job is, what their age is, there is a way to contribute. And so find that way to contribute and do that. And for those that are able to come out on the streets, now is the time to do so. And I encourage you, I ask you to join us, to join the dozens of organizations and the hundreds of endorsers to get on a bus from the dozens of cities that are sending buses to this march to join us on the streets on Saturday, April 5th.
Mm-hmm. Well, we will certainly be reporting it, and we will be covering it live and seeing what happens, and we'll be discussing the aftermath, and most certainly I'm sure the Palestinian Youth Movement will continue to give us great orientation and analysis as we move forward. Roua Dass with the Palestinian Youth Movement, thank you so much for joining us here on the Freedom Side.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.